Welcome inside the Redbird simulator at Take Flight Aviation. My name is Merle. We have John here, and we're going to go over some of the basic features and capabilities of the Garmin G1000.
I'm used to flying a Cessna 150, which has a 6-pack and no glass and one basic radio and VOR. This is a huge upgrade from that.
So John is as technologically savvy as he is handsome, so we're going to keep it extremely basic and simple. So let's jump right into it.
All right.
You know, in the beginning, it can be a little bit intimidating with all the capability, and obviously there's a lot of buttons and knobs on here. But once you kind of, get walked around it a couple times, and also realizing and appreciating a key aspect of it is that these two panels are exactly the same. So all the buttons that are on this side are the exact same as what's on that side.
Okay.
So that kind of cuts in half what might appear you have to get your head around.
All right. So if I'm flying on a cross country, I need help. My first time using the G1000, the instructor on the other side could help me out with it with their knobs and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we'll be doing. And having this state-of-the-art simulator with a G1000 is an excellent way to kind of transition into it and not have to be, spending the full amount for, flying around in the plane where there's a lot of other things going on. We can get a very good overview and learn the basic functions while we're on the ground where it's a little bit less stressful environment. So some people, who are transitioning from, traditional steam gauge 6-pack instrument panel, this will look quite different. And, we can see we have two monitors here. We call this the MFD, which is the multifunction display. And we have the PFD on the left, which is called our primary flight display. Pretty much all the instrumentation, all the information that would be contained in a 6-pack is here, as well as much more. So for starters here, on the PFD on the left side in front of the pilot, we have a very large attitude indicator. So that's kind of taking up most of the screen. We have this attitude indicator right here. We have blue on top, brown on the ground, brown on the bottom portion showing us the ground. This is what we use to see our attitude relative to the horizon. As we pitch up, the yellow horizon bars are going to increase above the horizon. If we pitch down, it goes below. And we can see our bank angle by this display ring up on top here.
Okay. So
it shows us these notches here. We have 10, 20, 30, 45, and 60 degrees of bank. So that's the attitude indicator. That's kind of our primary instrument here. On the left, we have the speed tape. So as we increase in speed and air starts flowing into the pitot tube, it's going to start registering on the airspeed indicator. And we can also set what we call airspeed bugs. So we can make a little marker to show us where our rotation speed is, where VY is, what our best glide is. And those are customizable within the G1000. On the right, we have our altitude tape. So this is going to, just as the airspeed tape does, as we climb and descend, this tape is going to be moving up and down, giving us a clear indication of our altitude, our current altitude, which is going to be here, and also showing us what our foot per minute climb or descent is, or our vertical speed indicator, which is shown on the right here. And when we get up in the air, we'll be able to see how that is displayed. On the bottom here, we have the HSI, horizontal situation indicator. This is basically like a heading indicator, but incorporates more information into it, particularly having like the VOR or GPS course overlaid onto it. It's a great tool for situational awareness, having the VOR displayed on top of the heading indicator. So that's a really nice feature. So that is basically the main instruments on the PFD. We have a number of other features on here, so we can talk a little bit about these. On the bottom of the altitude tape here, we have where we can set our barometric pressure. So this knob right here, when we listen to an ATIS or an ASOS and we hear what the altimeter setting is, we rotate this knob, the inner portion of this knob. It just goes up like that. Yeah, so that's the Baro knob. Further out, so on the same knob, but closer to us in the cockpit, is a separate switch, which we can select our course with. So if we were tuned into a VOR and we wanted to track a bearing to a VOR or track a certain radial to or from a VOR, we would twist this to select our course.
Okay.
And we'll get to in a second how we can switch what information is displayed on that. So right now it's magenta, which is always GPS. If we had like a GPS course loaded in, if we were going direct to a destination loaded into the G1000 GPS, that's where it would be displayed. If we hit this CDI button, we can change over to display a different nav source. So green is going to be like if we're tracking an ILS for instrument flying, or if we're going to be tracking a VOR. This is the display that we would want to have on there. We just talked about the PFD. We can go over to the MFD and just look at kind of what the primary differences are. So typically, you're going to have all of your flight instrumentation on the left side, and on the right side, on the MFD, is where we're going to have our engine indications.
Okay.
So oil temperature, pressure, fuel flow, fuel pressure, our electrical information, fuel quantity is all displayed here, which we're going to go into more detail in a second. And also we have what we call like the moving map. So we have our primary map. And what's really cool about this, you can configure it in numerous different ways. You can configure it north up or track up, so that when you're flying around, you can see where things are relative to your heading or relative to north, whatever people find to be more comfortable for them. So a way to think about this MFD, the multifunction display, is there's multiple, people describe it as like chapters in a book and then pages within each one of those chapters. So right now, and that's shown here on the bottom right here. So right now we have map is highlighted. So we're talking about the chapters. So if we go to the right on the FMS knob, so this is one of the key buttons we're going to be using in the G1000. This is what's called the FMS knob, Flight Management System. There's two portions of this knob. So we have like an inner portion and an outer portion, which is closer to us. And that's what's going to allow us to navigate through the different pages and chapters of the MFD. So right now so on the far left, if we scroll this inner knob all the way to the left, the FMS knob, we're going to be on our map navigation page.
Okay.
So to navigate through the chapters, and then we'll go back and see what's inside of each one of those, we can use this FMS knob to go one click to the right, and we saw that just went from map to, it says WPT, which stands for Waypoint, and this is our Waypoint airport information page. So if we had a destination, or we had like an active waypoint, say we were on a cross country and we loaded up Albany as our destination, if we went over to this waypoint page, which is just one to the right from the map, it's going to bring up the airport information. Here we have San Marcos Municipal, which is just the default on the G1000 on the Redbird. But this page is going to give us information about, well, it's going to tell us the name of the airport. It's going to tell us the GPS coordinates. It tells us the field elevation, which is nice to have accessible to us. So if we're trying to determine what the traffic pattern altitude is, or how we can plan our descent, if we're going to be, start a descent from an en route cruise, we can look at this and kind of have that right at our fingertips. This next section down here is going to tell us which runways we have here. So it tells us we have runway 13 and 31. It's 5,606 feet by 150 feet, hard surface, and it's operated full time. So we have the airport information, we have the runways available to us, and then on the bottom we have all the frequencies that pertain to this airport. So we have approach, AWAS, clearance, departure, Unicom, and the frequencies for the instrument approaches. And there's multiple functions we can do within this page. For example, we can just load a frequency directly from here up into either one of our comm radios, which is very nice. But we're going to come back to that when we get into more detail. So let's keep going. So we started on the map page, now we're on the waypoint page. I'm going to go one more click to the right with the FMS knob, and it's going to open up the auxiliary page. So this page is going to tell us information about our flight plan, distances that we have remaining in our entire trip or for each segment of our trip. It can tell us, it can keep track of our departure time. It can calculate time and route based on our speed at the time. It can tell us our ground speed, fuel flow, fuel on board. So, we have our fuel gauges, which are actually sensing and monitoring how much fuel we have on the plane. But we can use the G1000 as an auxiliary fuel planning tool to, set how much fuel we start with, and then the G1000 keeps track of what our fuel flow is, and it will tell us at any given time how much time of fuel we have remaining, which is a very cool feature. So this is the aux page. So map, waypoint, auxiliary, and then nearest. This is a really cool page that will tell us what the nearest. We can select airports, we can select VORs, we can select GPS waypoints. Right now it's on the default page is the airports. So this is a nice thing to have, and as a great aid to situational awareness and as a safety feature. At any point in time, you can just flip the FMS knob, this big one we've been moving around, all the way over to the nearest page, and it's going to tell us what the closest airports to us are. So within 3 seconds, I know how far away and what direction the closest airport is. So if there was ever an issue, or practicing engine outs, something I like to have students do if they have time and an altitude, they can just flip over to the nearest page, direct enter, and see, oh, maybe there's an airport just behind us that we weren't aware of. So that's a really nice tool to have. All right, so we just saw the main, what we call the chapters of the MFD, which again are map, waypoint, auxiliary, nearest. So as I said, we have chapters and then we have pages within each chapter. So on the map page, so we're all the way over to the left with the big FMS knob. If we turn the smaller FMS knob, the one that's closer to us, that's going to give us access to the different pages within that chapter.
All right.
So we're in the map chapter, and the first one is our primary navigation map. If we go one to the right, this is going to give us our traffic display. So this can be overlaid on top of the map, which we had up a second ago, but if we wanted to only display traffic, we can go to this second page within the map chapter, and that's going to display only traffic. There's no targets on here. We can perhaps try to get that up when we're up in the air, but being able to see where targets are relative to our position and how, both how far away they are and also what their altitude is relative to ours is an excellent, safety tool and situational awareness aid.
So does this basically display the ADS-B on the screen so you can see where our traffic is?
Does ADS-B, and people with altitude encoding transponders, that will also be on here. So even planes without ADS-B, that will be on here.
Okay.
So this is the second page within the map Chapter. So we have map down here, and I just went to the second page, one click to the right, and this is our traffic page. So one click more to the right, which we can also see we have these 3 boxes, and the one on the far right is the page that we're currently on. And this one right here, the third one, is our terrain awareness page. So this is going to provide like a color-coded display of terrain in our area. You can configure it to different parameters, but typically it's set to, if you're within 1,000 feet of the terrain, it'll be depicted as yellow. And if you're within 100 feet, it's going to be red. So again, flying at night or in mountainous terrain, or if you're flying in the clouds on the IFR flight plan, another great situational awareness aid to help us know where low-lying terrain might be. And let's look at nearest. So as we saw before, the default first page in the nearest chapter, we could say, is the nearest airports, which is going to give us the name of the airport, how long the runway is, what runways they have, frequencies, and which approaches they have. So key information displayed right here. It's 2 clicks on the FMS knob. Let's go 1 click to the right on the small FMS knob to the next page. And these are our nearest intersections. So these are like GPS waypoints that would be on like an IFR low en route chart, or on a sectional if you wanted to navigate to it. You can select this page and say we wanted to go to Gary's. We push the cursor. So one thing I haven't mentioned, the FMS knob, we have these 2 knobs which navigate between the chapters and the pages, and we also have the function of pressing the FMS knob, and that's going to give us what we call the cursor. So the defaults, we just come to the page and it looks like this. So if I were to turn these knobs, it's going to navigate to the other pages. However, if I push the FMS knob, we saw marks just illuminated. So I turn it off, push it again, it illuminates marks, and that means that we can now scroll within this list. So with the small FMS knob, I can go down to any waypoint that I want, and we can see that the information changes as we do that. So it tells us the name, it tells us the heading to fly to get there, how far it is, and what the frequency is for this VOR, which is a reference to it. All right, and then we'll go to the next page, nearest NDB. So if we wanted to know what the closest NDBs to us were, we can go to the nearest page, scroll over with a small FMS knob to the NDB page. It's going to tell us which NDBs are close by, what the heading is, and how far away they are. 1 click over on the small FMS knob is going to give us nearest VOR. So same as with all the other ones, it's going to tell us what heading to fly to get there, and also the distance. And same as with the waypoints or the NDBs, if I say we want to go to the Sierra Alpha Tango VOR, hit the cursor knob, and then I can use the small FMS knob to scroll down to it, and I get more information. I see the frequency is 116.8, and something I'll show right now, which we can use for any one of these features, is say we want to navigate to this VOR. I've selected it, so I scroll down to the one that I want with the small FMS knob, and now if I hit this D button with the arrow going through it, that's the direct to button.
Okay.
So direct, and it says direct to. It's verifying that this is the facility, or the VOR in this case, that I want to go to. And then I want to hit enter. Oh, saying duplicate waypoints. So there's multiple VORs. I guess these are all over the world that have the same identifier. So it's asking us to verify which one are we talking about. So we're in the USA, we want to go to that one. So I'm just going to hit enter and enter again. And one more time, so activate. So what this did is it just drew a magenta GPS course to the waypoint that we just selected, which in this case was the SAT VOR. If we want to get a better picture of this and see exactly where we're going, one of these knobs here is the zoom feature, so we can zoom in and out on our screen. So we can see the distance that it's referencing. Right now this ring is representing 5 nautical miles. So from our airplane, which is there, to the edge of this ring is 5 nautical miles. And as we scroll out, this number changes, the map zooms out, and these numbers correspond with that. So if we scroll out to, we're at 37.5 miles, meaning that it's 37 miles from our plane to the edge of this ring, we can see that the San Antonio VOR is at our 10 o'clock. So which is a great situation where as if we're flying, we can just glance over at this and say, okay, I need to make a left turn about 240 to start heading in the direction of this waypoint.
Okay.
This also translates over, so these screens talk to each other. And when you put something in here, the information is also going to be displayed on the PFD, the primary flight display. So, sometimes when people start flying these, called like the moving map, where you get a very clear depiction of our route or where we need to go, people they're like, oh great, I can just follow the magenta line, which you could do. And certainly for situational awareness is a very good tool, but we're going to get much more accurate navigation information by looking at our HSI over here, where as soon as we hit enter on this and it put direct to the SAT VOR, we now have GPS navigation displayed right on top of our HSI, or our heading indicator, telling us how to navigate to that point. All right, so we'll keep moving. So to come back to the MFD, we're in the nearest chapter, and we're on the nearest VOR page within that chapter. So one more scroll to the right. If we can have user waypoints, so if we wanted to load in a waypoint that wasn't a fix that's on a sectional chart or an IFR low and route chart or whatever, we can make coordinates, or if we're over a point that we want to drop a pin basically on, we can have that in here and reference it for later use. We don't have any loaded in here right now, that's why there's nothing up here.
So for like private strips and stuff that aren't on a sectional or on the GPS, you can put in the coordinates.
Exactly. Yeah. Or nice. You could if you wanted to go find your house, you could find out what the coordinates are of your house, load it in here, and then you could have that as a user waypoint and go directly to that point.
So the GPS in this, no matter where you put in the waypoint coordinates, could take you right there?
Yeah. Wow. Anywhere in the world. So the last page in this chapter of the nearest chapter is Airspace Alerts. So the G1000, if you have a current database, knows where we have prohibited areas, where we have restricted areas, and it will depict them on the map, as well as give you alerts for when you're approaching them, to make sure that you don't inadvertently enter some special airspace that you're not supposed to be in, which is a nice feature. And it also tells us the vertical limits. So it's telling us that prohibited area is at 40 alpha is ahead in 8 minutes. We're going to be there at our current speed, and it goes up to 12,500 feet. So another great tool for situational awareness, having that displayed in real time on your map, as opposed to having to keep up with your sectional, where you might not be 100% where you are at any given time. So that was a brief overview of the different chapters and pages within the chapters on the MFD, the multifunction display. For getting started, that might seem like a lot of information, which that really is one of the defining aspects of the G1000. It's an extremely capable flight management system, and to use it for the purposes of, flying around safely, using GPS to navigate to, from one point to another, or looking up frequencies, managing our engine systems, that, we don't have to get into like all the minutia of the different pages, but the capability is there. And, the more we learn about it, the more time we spend in it, it's, just opens up many realms of possibilities of using this system. All right, so maybe we should go on the plane, see if you can find some good stuff with that.
All right, let's go.
We just had a brief overview in the simulator, and now we are in the DA40NG with the Garmin G1000 NXi, which is the new updated version of the G1000, which has crisper displays, faster processor, and some additional features. So I just want to go over some of the basic functions that we're going to be using on a regular basis, including the radios, the nav frequencies, how we can set our transponder, how we can set different transponder codes, how we can bug heading or altitude, and so on and so forth. So, all right, as we saw in the simulator, we're looking at the PFD here, the primary flight display. We have our attitude indicator displayed most prominently front and center. We have the airspeed tape on the left. We're stationary right now, so it's showing 0. We have our altitude bugs, the ones that are preset in here, ready to go. So as we reach those speeds, those are going to come alive and come up onto the airspeed tape. We have the altimeter right here. We're at Orange County on the ground, which is at approximately 360 feet. So I guess our altimeter setting is about 29.85. On the bottom here, our HSI, horizontal situation indicator. On the top is showing our heading. So a very nice clear display of what our heading is. And we can see we have, GPS is selected. The magenta arrow is what our navigation source is at this moment. Say we come out to the plane, we fire it up, and we're getting ready to taxi out to the runway. What we want to do is load up our frequencies. So before every flight, we want to listen to what the current weather conditions are. At Orange County, the AWOS frequency is 119.275, which we can see is loaded on the left side on the bottom of our two COM frequencies. So we have COM1 on top, which we see by the 1, it says COM on the right, COM1 and COM2. And we have, as we said, we have standby on the right and active on the left. So active is the one that we're currently listening, transmitting, or both on. And the standby is the one which we can manipulate with the frequency selector knobs. As we said, the way we can change our frequencies is by manipulating these two knobs here. The inner, bigger knob, which is close to the panel, that's going to be changing our whole numbers, so we can go 125, 126, 127. And then the outer knob, this one here, the same knob but further out, is going to give us our hundreds. So we can select any frequency we want. And this is where we go to select our frequency. Say we want to switch to 124.0. We use the bigger knob, which is closer to the panel, 124, smaller knob, closer to us, down to 0. And then, so that's the frequency we want in the standby position on COM1. If we want to switch that over to active, and we want to listen to or transmit on it, we're going to hit this button here, right above the COM knob, which is going to flip-flop the frequency. So when I hit that, they just switched place. So 124.0 is now active, and the frequency which was on the left is now on the right. So that's now in standby. And I can now change this frequency. So that's COM1. If we want to go down to COM2, we press this button, so similar to the FMS knob, it has a function where you can press this COM selector knob, and we're going to watch this blue square around the frequency drop down to the bottom. So I'm going to push that. It just dropped down. So what I can now do is tune the frequency that I want on COM2. So again, whenever we change a frequency, it changes it on the standby frequency. And then when we're ready to make it active, we hit this button. So say I want to load up 132.5, big knob 132, small knob down to 0.5. And then if I want to make it active, same as on COM1, we're going to hit this button, and those two frequencies just flipped. So, important to remember when you're trying to tune the radio that you have the light blue box around the frequency that you're trying to change. So right now we're on COM2, we can manipulate this frequency. Over to COM1, we can manipulate this frequency. The way that we listen to a different frequency is over on our audio control panel right here in the middle. So right now, COM1, so we have two buttons here that both say COM1, and the one on the left says COM1 and it says mic under it. So what that means is that we are transmitting and listening on COM1. If I wanted to switch over to COM2, say we put our ground frequency on the bottom, we just pulled off the runway, and I had 32.5 as our ground frequency, I'm going to hit COM2, the left one, the one that says COM2 mic, and we're going to watch these two lights come down here. So as I hit that, these two lights came on, indicating that we are transmitting and listening on COM2, and we can verify that by seeing that 132.5 is green. It was white before, and now it's green. So I'll go back to COM1, that becomes green. COM2 active frequency on the left is now active. We're listening and transmitting on that frequency. So one of the cool features of this is we can listen to two separate frequencies at once. We can only transmit on one, but we can be listening and transmitting on one. For example, if we were en route talking to air traffic control and we wanted to pick up the ATIS, but we didn't want to just totally change frequencies so we wouldn't hear if they called us. So if we want to listen to two frequencies simultaneously, the way that we do that is we have the frequency that we are listening and transmitting on the top here. We can see that because we have COM1 mic and COM1 illuminated. So we're transmitting and listening to COM1, which is this top frequency on the left. And then if I want to listen or monitor our COM2 active frequency, I'm going to hit this button so that it's illuminated. If it's illuminated, that means that I am now listening to COM1 as well as COM2, but only transmitting on COM1. All right, make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is our communication system here. So we have, as we said, COM1, COM2, active, standby. We manipulate the frequencies like so with the whole numbers and then decimal places. We switch between active and standby by pressing this flip-flop switch back and forth. And I can select COM2 in order to tune the frequency by pressing the COM knob like that. And then I can manipulate this frequency here and switch it over. Okay, so on the other side, on the left, we have our nav frequencies. So this is if we want to listen, if we want to track a VOR, we're going to have to dial in the frequency, as well as if we're shooting an ILS approach or something like that, we're going to get that frequency up here on the left. So we got COM and we got nav. These work very similarly the way I explained with tuning and standby and active. Important to remember, active is always on the inside of the panel. So this is the outside, this is the inside. Right now on nav 1, the active frequency is 117.6, standby is 116.1. So I can manipulate the frequency on the standby frequency by using this knob here, which says nav, very identical to one over here that says COM, works the same way. The inner portion of the knob is going to give us our whole numbers, and the outer smaller portion is going to give us our hundredths. So say we want to dial up the Huguenot VOR 116.1. I just tuned it in the standby nav 1. If I want to switch that over to active, I'm going to hit this button just like we have over here, and we saw those frequencies just switch place. So now 116.1 is our active nav 1 frequency. So we have 2 nav radios. We can dial up another one as well, and similarly or identically to how we did it on the COM side, if I want to tune the nav 2 frequency, I'm going to hit this nav button, and we just saw the blue box drop from the top to the bottom. So if I just keep pushing that, it just goes up and down. So now we're on the bottom, and I can now tune the nav 2 frequency. So big knob giving us our whole numbers, small knob giving us our decimal place. And then say that's the frequency I want to identify or track. I'm going to hit the swap button, and it's going to put it over in active. So it works very similarly, not identically, to how the COM system works in terms of identifying and then switching to active and standby. But on the left we have our nav, and on the right we have the COMs. The one on the inside portion is active. So if we were up in the air, and so a nice thing about this, about the G1000, is it will auto identify a frequency if we put it in there. So if we, like right here, it's telling us this is Poughkeepsie Tower, the green active frequency. So we always know who we're talking to. On the left, if we were up in the air and the VOR was working, it would turn green and it would tell us that this is the Huguenot VOR. So instead of having to, turn on the audio for the nav 1 receiver and listen to the Morse code identifier, the G1000 does it for us, which is a very nice feature, which when we get up in the air, we will see how that works. So that's the communications and nav operation. It's pretty straightforward once you use it a little bit. We talked about how to tune the radios, how to go between active and standby, and the last thing that we'll mention is just how we can adjust the volume of the different COM1 and COM2. So right now, as we said, like our selector box, that blue box, is up on COM1, so 121.0, and I can adjust the volume for COM1 by turning this volume knob. So when I turn that, we get a display in percentage. We can set that to whatever's comfortable for us. And what's cool is we can also change the volume of the 2 frequencies independently of each other. So as you said, if we're monitoring approach control and we want to pick up an ATIS, but if it's a little too loud and we want to turn it down, we can press the cursor down to COM2, where we see the blue box on COM2. And if I adjust the volume knob, we see that the volume percentage gets displayed on the bottom. So in this situation, we have the volume on COM2 is 42%. And if I want to adjust the volume on COM1, I hit the cursor, bring the blue box up to COM1, and then I can adjust that. The next thing we can look at is transponder code. So in older aircraft, we have its own independent transponder box, and in this plane, it's all incorporated into the G1000. So, this is displayed right here where it says XPDR. It's on 1200, which is our VFR default transponder code. If we want to change that, say we are, we pick up flight following and they tell us to squawk 1, 2, 3, 4. We are going to press this transponder soft key. So they call these buttons down here the soft keys. And depending on what features are open or what page you're in, these are going to have different options. So on the main default page of the PFD, transponder is right here. We're going to press that soft key, and now we have different options that just came up. We can ident if they told us to ident. We can put in or select a different code. We can push VFR, which will automatically switch it to 1200 for us. And we can select our modes for the transponder, whether it's in like altitude mode, on, or standby. So as we said, say we're up in the air, we get flight following, and they say squawk 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to hit code, which just brought up all these numbers across the bottom, and each soft key corresponds with the number that it's below. So say they said 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to press 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I pressed that, the transponder code that I pushed in showed up here. So whereas before it was saying 1200, it's now telling us that we are squawking 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we have the ident button. They told us to ident. And then say we reach our destination, they said, squawk VFR. We can hit transponder. If I wanted to, I could hit code and just dial in 1200, or I can just hit VFR, and it's going to automatically put in 1200 for us. All right, so let's look at some more of these soft key options that we have on the bottom. So the one let's look at this one on the far right. So this is flashing caution. So this is going to give us our crew alerting system, so our CAS messages. So if we had like what's displayed up here, low volts, pitot heat off, if the door was open, if the alternator failed, that's going to come up here, but it's also going to be flashing, letting us know that there's like a message for us. So we can click on that, and it gives us more information saying the front or rear door is open, alternator fail. So we can get more information about the messages that the G1000 is telling us. So one over, we have nearest. So just as we saw, and as I was explaining earlier, a lot of the things you can do on this side, on the MFD, we can also do on the PFD. So nearest is going to tell us what our nearest airports are. So I just hit nearest, and depending on where I am, it's going to tell me what the nearest airports are to my position. So it's telling us KMGJ Orange County is the nearest airport because we're here. It's going to tell you a heading to fly to get there. It has the CTAF frequency, or Unicom, right there. It tells us the longest runway, and it tells us we have an ILS approach to that. So very key pertinent information at the press of a button. Say we wanted to go to one of these other airports that's on here. I'm going to turn the large FMS knob, so same one we had on that side, we have on this side. All the buttons are identical. We can turn the large FMS knob, and it's going to move the cursor to the different positions. So we can scroll down with the FMS knob to a frequency, and just by hitting enter, it's going to place that frequency in whatever box we have selected. So right now it's on 124.0, the blue box, which is our standby. If we hit enter there, it just came active in there. If I have it down on the bottom and I go to this frequency, 122.8, hit enter, it just put it in COM2. And then if I want to make that active, press the switch, and now it's active on COM2. If I wanted to transmit, press COM2, and now we're transmitting and listening on COM2. All right, so that's what we can do with the frequencies on this. What's perhaps more useful and a real time saver in the event of a diversion or an emergency situation is being able to quickly load direct navigation to a nearby airport. So again, we'll just back it up. We're on the main PFD page. I hit nearest. It's going to bring up my nearest airports. Say I want to go to Stewart. We got the cursor on MGJ, big FMS knob to Stewart. I want to go to Stewart. So what am I going to do? Direct, which is this D button on the top left of these 6 buttons here. That's our direct button. So direct to. Now it's asking me, this is where you want to go direct to, Stewart International. Now I'm going to hit enter once. It highlights activate, enter again. So direct, enter, enter. And now it's giving us GPS navigation to Stewart. And we can verify that that's where we're going by looking up on the top here and seeing that we are going direct to Stewart. The distance is 7 nautical miles and the bearing is 108 degrees, which is indicated on our HSI. So this is a really useful thing if we're trying to go direct to an airport in the close vicinity to us, because it's going to list the airports in the order of their distance. So, if you were going up to Albany and you were, that's like 60, 70 miles away and you hit nearest, it's not going to come up because there's a lot of airports that are closer than Albany. But if we're, say, in the practice area and we just want to get back to Orange County, nearest, Orange County is the first one that comes up because it's the closest airport to where we are. Direct, enter, enter. So very useful feature right there. The next thing we can look at, kind of in line with the nearest page, is how we can enter a GPS waypoint, fix, airport, or whatever we want into the navigation system. So say we want to go to, for example, we just said Albany. So say I want to go to Albany. As we said, the best way to do it is not to go to nearest, because there's a ton of airports that are closer than Albany. They're going to show up on that list first. So we just want to bypass that and enter Albany as our destination directly. So the way we do that is by pressing this direct to button. So on the top left, direct to. It brought up Orange County because that's currently our active waypoint, but if we want to put in a different waypoint, we are going to use the FMS knobs to select it. So we need to have the cursor flashing on it. So sometimes, so I just pressed the cursor button. Now there's no cursor. So if I were to try to manipulate the FMS knobs, nothing happens. So we need to get the cursor on Orange County or on our destination. So I hit the cursor and now it just lit up in blue and it's flashing. So now we're able to change it. And we're going to use the large and small FMS knob to select Albany, which is Kilo Alpha Lima Bravo. So first thing we're going to do is turn the small FMS knob, the one closer to us, one to the right. And the first thing that it brings up is K, because it suspects that we're wanting to go to an airport. So this is how we select different letters or numbers on the cursor that we are on. So we're going to go to K. Now I want to go to the next letter, so I'm going to use the big FMS knob and scroll one to the right. So that's how we move the cursor to the next position. So A is what I want, so I'm going to keep that. I'm going to go one more to the right, and we saw it just move over one. And we're going to scroll over to L. And it actually even populated the next letter because it's suspecting that that's where we want to go. So we have Kilo Alpha Lima Bravo. This is where we want to go, so I'm going to hit enter. It's asking us if we want to activate it, and I'm going to hit enter again. So let's do that one more time. Say we want to go to Oxford. I'm going to hit direct. We have the cursor already on our box there to put in our destination. I'm going to use the small knob, turn one to the right. We have K there, is what I want. Large FMS knob, one to the right. We're going to go over to O. All right, that's what we want. Large FMS knob, one to the right. Spin it over to X. And then large FMS knob, scroll over one to the right, move our cursor one to the right. And then Charlie. So we have COMC, that's where we want to go. Enter, enter. And now it's giving us GPS navigation to Oxford. And importantly, we always want to verify that where the GPS is taking us is where we want it to be taking us, because if you didn't load it correctly or you didn't hit enter, it's not going to be taking you where you want to go. Just like with everything else, the information you get out of it is only as good as what you put into it. So we always verify that the GPS or the autopilot is doing what we want it to do. And we do that by verifying our destination is up here. So this is telling us we are going direct to Kilo Oscar X-Ray Charlie. Distance 50.8 nautical miles and a bearing of 105. The last thing we're going to look at, just kind of following on in our discussion of kind of the primary features of the G1000 PFD that we use on a regular basis during training and flying. We can look at the heading bug and also the altitude bug. So, if we're flying around and your instructor says, all right, let's climb up to 3,500 and give me a heading of 360, we can put a bug on those altitudes and heading to basically give us a reference, which is going to be displayed on the altimeter tape as well as on the heading indicator. We'll start with the altitude. We can do it on the MFD or on the PFD. I always like to use my right hand because, if we're flying the plane, we have our hand on the left stick. I don't want to be reaching across like this. So we have kind of the inner portion of the knob and the outer portion. The inner portion is going to give us thousands of feet. So I'm going to turn this, each click is going from 1,500, 2,500, 3,500, and then the outer knob gives us hundreds of feet. So each click is 100 feet, so there's 3,000, dial it up to 3,500. So now we have a reference in case we forgot, and also while we're flying, as soon as we get up to that altitude, there's going to be a blue bug, which is going to come down when we're right at 3,500, so we can use that as like a quick reference. So that's the altitude bug feature, and we'll also take a look at the heading bug. So, as we said, say your instructor says, all right, give me a heading 360, or you're talking to ATC and they give you a vector, we can put that into the PFD to give you a display as a visual reference and also as a reminder of whatever it was you set. So just like with the altitude, we have on both the PFD and the MFD, we also have the heading on the MFD and the PFD. So I can do it here or I can do it here. I like to do it on the right side, which again, because if I'm flying the plane with my left hand, I can just have everything that I need right in this area. So as I turn this knob, it brings this box up here, it says heading, and just as I turn it, it's just indicating whatever heading I am selecting. And we can also see that translated with the heading bug, which is this marker reference, which is turning around the HSI. So if we said 360, we can turn to 360, and we have that bug right there. So when we turn to 360, we have that blue marker right at the top as a quick visual reference. Another feature of this is if we want to bring that up to the top, say we want to bug our present heading, all we have to do is just press the heading bug and it just shoots it up to the top at whatever heading we're presently at. So again, say we're out here and I want to center my heading bug, press it, boom, it's right there. So that's how the heading bug and the altitude bug features work. Always a good habit to bug your headings and your altitude, so again you remember whatever you were told to do or what you're trying to fly, and also have a quick reference visual identifier of your heading and your altitude. So until next time, this was kind of a crash course on the basic features of the G1000. Obviously we can go into a lot more depth of the different systems, both on the MFD and the PFD, but for someone who's transitioning, it's we find that it's once you kind of get used to the display differences, which if you look at it as compared to a round gauge, the displays are very prominent and they're much closer together. So, you know, our scan from going from our attitude indicator, we just do a quick glance over to the right, see our heading displayed, or sorry, our altitude very clearly displayed right here on the right, our airspeed right here on the left, as well as our heading. Everything is, you know, very close together, which is nice. We don't have to have our eyes moving around so much. The displays are very large and clear, which after a few flights, most people find that it's a lot easier and intuitive to use, and it can even be a challenge to go back to steam gauge. So we hope that was somewhat helpful. We're going to be putting out additional videos going in more depth on the different systems, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.